Hello my creative friends, it's time to take another little art break, and today we're going to be creating this whimsical style teapot just full of blooming little flowers on the top. This has an adorable little bird and a sweet little surprise inside of that flower. It's a little ladybug. I'm going to walk you through the steps at first of how you could draw a teapot if you would like to draw one, but I do also have a sketchbook membership. That's where I have all of the line tracers for any of the paintings I do on my channel. There's going to be a QR code that pops up right there. You can go ahead and scan that, or there'll be a link inside of my description box where you can simply go over there. My membership is very reasonably priced, and I so appreciate all those who have joined and support my channel that way. Well, let's get started and we'll teach you how I drew this little cute teapot, and we'll begin the painting process of how I painted this whimsical style, fun little summertime painting. The teapot I drew was very simple for the base. This shape here is going to be narrower at the top and then it gets gradual. It's just like basically a simple vase shape. So that's what I started out with. I had to decide where I wanted it located on my paper. So that will be a little narrower, and then it's going to come out this way and be a little rounded. Now teapots come in all kinds of shapes. This is just how I drew mine. And mine's a little bit flatter on the bottom. Now I gave my teapot some feet, so I gave little upside down triangles for my feet. And then for the handle, I drew my handle so it's going to come out a little ways in here. It's going to come out a little ways here, so it has a little dimension, and then it's going to come up and around. And this is, I like to call it kind of putting an ear on my item. It's going to come up a ways, but it's always going to connect more down towards the bottom of your teapot, however you're drawing it. And then we're going to come up and we're going to just match that same shape that we just drew. And I just anchored mine like this. Now, like I said, there's lots of ways to draw teapots, but this is how I drew mine. And then for the little pouring area here, the little spout, I started off to the side and made a flat area first. That was where I was going to have the top of my spout be. And then I'm going to come down, and it's going to come back and around and connect to my teapot there. Now we're going to follow this one down here. Whoops, it looks like I drew it out a little ways and came in, so I made a little lip, and then I came down and around. And that's how I drew my little teapot. And then I put just another little ridge at the top to give it a top feel. And that's pretty much it. But like I said, there's lots of ways to draw teapots, but it's a fun shape to draw, and then you can fill it with whatever you want. This one worked great for putting little flowers and adding this sweet little bird, and then adding something down below for your teapot to sit on. Well, let's get started and I'll show you how I painted mine. One of the first things I did was I swatched my colors and decided which color palette I wanted to use. I was going to be using the student grade of watercolor that I purchased off of Amazon. It's just an inexpensive set, but you know, watercolor will last you a really long time. So even if you bump up and use more of a professional grade of watercolor, you get a lot of paintings out of one of these sets of paintings. So you can always start with student, but don't feel like you can never buy the next stage up, because yes, it does cost more money, but it will last you a very long time. I do a lot of painting, and I haven't even gone through 2 sets of watercolor at all. For this, I'm painting on the Canson brand watercolor. It's a paper, it's 140 pound. It's a student grade paper, but again, I paint a lot, and I find that the Canson watercolor paper, I can get a pretty good look with this. A lot of other lesser expensive papers, you struggle a lot with trying to get your paint to move and get your water to flow right with it. So I always suggest just spending a little bit more money on your watercolor paper, buy the paint you can afford, and then start practicing and seeing how watercolor layers on your paper and how it reacts to the water. On this particular area, I started at the bottom of the teapot, and I did a water first, just clear water on that area I wanted to paint. It's a little bit larger area to paint, so I know if I add a little bit of water first before I put my watercolor pigment colors on the top, I'm gonna have a longer time to kind of push and pull my colors, or even lift a little color if I want to add a highlight. So first I add that water on, and you can kind of see it glistening here in the background. I don't want so much on there where it's flooded, but I want it to see it glistening. And then I start with my lightest shade of color I want, and it's going to be this light blue color. And then while it's still wet, I'm going to pick up a darker turquoise color, and I'm going to lay that color on it while it's still wet, and the colors will blend together softly and create that pretty watercolor look that we're all so used to looking at or wanting when we do watercolor. Here I'm putting it on, but it's a little bit more of like a band look where you can see where I'm putting my color exactly. To solve that problem, I'm going to rinse my brush out in clear water, give it a little bit of a squeeze, and then I'm going to come into those areas and I'm going to softly manipulate them, almost like you're tickling that area and softly pushing the color around. And that will help so that your colors will blend a little bit better. Because this is a student grade paper, I do have to work at it a little bit more. Sometimes when you're using more 100% cotton paper, you might have a little bit more blending process that happens naturally. But because I'm using the student grade paper, I'm going to have to work at it a little bit more. I'm going to layer these colors on, and then I'm definitely going to give them time to dry before I work onto a next area. Now, when you're doing watercolor, it always wants to flow wherever your paper is wet. So if I went ahead and started painting my little bird, my bird colors are going to float right into my teapot colors, or my teapot colors will blend right into my bird. And I know I didn't want to do that. So I'm going to pop up and work on my flowers a little bit more. I'm starting with a light shade of color first. I'm using this peach color. Now, if you're in my sketchbook membership, I always give you the color swatch of what I use. So you can have a reference when you're working on yours to get an idea of what I used and then work as inspiration. You always get a copy too of what my finished painting is. Sometimes it's just nice to have a reference. I'm going to start with that lightest shade, and then I'm tapping in the color, another color on top of it while it's still wet. So I'm going to get those colors to blend in. I like to call a little bit of watercolor magic. It's going to blend and mix together. I'm still tapping it a little bit because this is a student grade paper, so a lot of times you do have to kind of help the manipulation to get your colors to blend a little bit more, but that's how that works. And I'm using a number 6 Princeton brush. It's got a nice little tip on the end. I'll have some links down inside of my description box for some of the things I'm using today. So if you're interested, you can always take a look and see if there's something there that might help your watercoloring process as well. Now I've had this set for a while, and you can kind of tell which colors I use the most. Those are the ones that have the big holes in them. But I've had some colors in here that I don't really ever use, and today when I was practicing and painting, I wanted to make sure I tried some colors I don't normally use. And that pink color that I just put on that flower is just that. It's a color that I don't think about pulling out of my paint tray. And I just really like this color. It's got a little bit of white mixed into it, so it's a little bit more opaque. It's kind of leaning more towards a gouache in a way because it does have so much white in it, but it was very pretty. It was between a pink and a coral color. But I did the same way. I added a little water on that flower first to get it to move a little bit more because there was so much white in there. I wanted to have that translucent quality, so I put water on first, then put my pink on, and then I tapped a little bit of the orange colors in there. Now I'm going to move out to the sides, and I'm going to do those round little flowers, and I started with a bright green and then tapped a little bit of turquoise on just one area and let those colors flow. And yeah, I forgot that top one, but I do come back and work that in. But sometimes when I'm working, I just forget about things and I got to go back in and paint them. I'm going to use that same technique of how I worked the green flowers. I'm going to do that for the handles and for the band across the front of the teapot and the spout. I'm going to be putting that same color combination, so I'm starting with that bright shade of green, adding a little bit of the turquoise. I'm going to choose to have the inside of the handle to have the darkest shadow, so I'm going to lay in a little bit of that darker color, rinse my brush out, give it a little squeeze, and then manipulate those colors a little bit to see if I can get them to blend. I'm going to try to have at least a highlight at the very top. You can also create highlights if you clean your brush out with clean water and then give it a squeeze, and then you can lift some of your colors out. If you want to try to leave a brighter highlight, you can do that as well. I'm going to go over and do the spout the same way and that band. On the spout, I'm adding water first, putting the bright green on, tipping it in, doing a little bit of the turquoise color, And this one, I actually got a little bit too much water in it. And I realized that as I was putting it on. And if you have too much water when you do this, you're going to end up with, it's called bloom marks. It's where your paint might dry a little funny, where there's slight little ridges that are darker in certain areas. And it almost, I like the look of blooms when I would like to have them to add more texture, but I really wasn't looking for that look on this teapot. So I went back in with my brush after I rinsed it out, and I lifted some of the color in the water so I wouldn't get those blooms in that area. So that's what you can keep in mind if you do end up with a little bit too much water. It's always great to have like a tester sheet off to the side too, to test your colors, to see how they're going to layer up, because you're probably using different paint than I am. So if you have a sheet like I had done earlier when I showed you in the beginning, I actually tested my colors on a test sheet to decide if I wanted, which colors I wanted to try and use. And that's super helpful when you're starting a watercolor painting, because if you have been painting watercolor, you know that sometimes there's not a lot of leeway to make changes once you start. So it is kind of a great idea to have an idea of what colors you want to do and know how your colors will play on top of it as you're layering them on. With watercolor, the color theory makes a difference. So if you're going to be adding a red and a green on top of each other, you're going to end up with more of a brown color. So it's great to kind of keep those things in mind, that complementary colors, if you lay them on the top, it's going to become very neutral and almost a brown color. But colors that are in the same color family, so I'm mixing my greens here and I'm tapping in a little bit of blue-green or a yellow-green, or you could even do a blue-blue. All those colors will play really nice together and you won't end up with kind of a brown, dullish color. On the leaves, I just was trying to focus on adding different shades so they weren't all the same. This is just my first layer of my color. Often when I'm doing watercolor, I'm at least doing 2 layers, and sometimes I often do 3. For these flowers at the very top, as they dried, my colors kind of became a lot lighter, so I needed to come back in and add another layer. But definitely let your paintings dry in as you're doing it, so you can check your colors to see how they're drying and where you might need to actually add more interest. This is the stage I'm actually going to paint that center. And why didn't I paint it before? It's because I wanted my colors to stay separate. So I wanted the handle to be separate from the in-between piece and the spout to look different as well. So they look like individual pieces. If I do them all at the same time, my colors have a really good chance of running into each other and all my color mixing, and I really wanted to keep them separate. So I waited for those areas of the spout and the handle to dry before I went ahead and painted that center area. Now I'm going to go ahead and add the light blue to those little they're almost like a polka dot shape, but in reality I wanted it to have a feeling of that there was a raised bump on the teapot. So I left those white, or as much as I could, and then I went back in and added the white. The same idea is I wanted those areas to feel a little separate, so I waited to paint them a little later, not at the same time. I'm coming back in and I'm starting to work a little bit on the bird feathers, and I wanted to have a little bit of a stripy feeling there. So I'm going to be layering in a couple different shades of pink on those feathers on the wings. You can see I've already added a few more colors onto those flowers up above and added a few more layers. It's really a great idea when you're doing watercolor is take your time, layer your colors. Don't go too quick, too fast. If you add too much color right away, you're going to lose that translucent quality and it becomes very opaque and you lose that real pretty quality of watercolor. So down below, I'm working on this little doily, and I just love the way it turned out. I love the little wonky nature of it and how it's not perfect, and the perspective really isn't probably right. But I love the way that the colors did blend. I started with the lightest color first, and I added that pink on while it was still wet, so those colors would kind of blend together. I'm going to be using some color pencil at the end and some ink work, so I knew I didn't need to have it perfect. I just wanted the color to be on there. So I forgot to paint the feet too. I don't know, but I wanted the feet to match the greens that I had done up above. So I'll need to wait until all of that pink is dry down below before I can add those green feet on there. When I'm creating a painting, what I really like to do is make sure that my colors that I'm using are kind of throughout in different areas of my painting. So it's not just all centered only just above. I want to carry some of that color down below. So I like the idea that the doily underneath is the same color as my flowers on top, and it just brings that color down and throughout. Now this is when I'm adding a color I haven't used yet. It's a navy color, and I wanted that to be the accent color on the top rim, and I'm choosing one side of the bump to add that little color of the dark navy in. You might notice me up above kind of mixing my colors. I like to do that because what I'm doing is I'm picking up some color that I had used from some other area, adding it to the color that I'm mixing, and I'm kind of marrying my colors together, and it becomes really cohesive where I have some bits of colors everywhere. So you don't have to just use straight out of the pan colors. You can mix your own onto the side, and it really does look great, and it harmonizes your painting. Now here I'm doing a little bit of that color mixing where I did really kind of want a brown. So I mixed a little bit of blue and a little bit of the orange color together to come out with more of a brownish color. And I was negative painting that around my ladybug because I want my ladybug to stay white yet because I'm going to make it pink. And I don't want any of that color inside of there. Now I'm finally adding a little bit of detail around. This is another color I haven't used in my paint set at all. It's kind of a raspberry color, and I think to myself, why haven't I used that raspberry color before? It's really pretty, and it looks great when I mixed it with white. So it's definitely a color I'll use again. Now I'm doing pinks on the feathers, but I wanted that tummy to be more of an orange color, kind of like those flowers up above. So again, I'm bringing that color combination down, and I did tap a little bit of that raspberry pink on the tummy as to add a little bit of a freckle area. And for the beak, I used the same color that I had used up above for the center of the flower. I used that for the beak. And now I'm just going to mix a little bit of more of the pink and the orange down below until I'm happy with what it looks like. Of course, letting it dry so I can see how much more dark I need to add. It's a great idea to have dark, medium, and light. But with watercolor, you're always painting the shadows. So you're starting light and then you're working your way dark. It's just the opposite of what acrylic paint usually is. With acrylic paint, you usually always start with your darks and then build medium and light. And this is just the opposite. I don't show it as I'm moving through the video, but I'm actually giving my painting a dry. I'm using a heat tool to dry my colors quickly, so then I can take a look at what I need to add more dimension to. I'm going to go ahead and add that navy color that I had used as the accent color around my teapot. That's the color I'm going to use for the little bird's head. I have found with all the little birds I have done, it's really a nice look as if you can leave a white area around the eye. It just brings that little bird to life. If you lose the little white area, you can always come in with like a uni ball pen, something like that, to add that little extra white circle around the eye, but it really does add a little sparkle to your bird. Now I'm coming in and I'm using that raspberry color again and just popping it in, and I really do like how that raspberry color looks. It just adds a very nice rich tone of that darker pink color. I added some of that raspberry color to my little bird too. I made the tail that color and added some of that to the stripes as well. And here you can see me trying to leave that little white circle around the eye, and hopefully you can see what a difference it makes. Now it was all dry, I took the tape off, and now I was going to start the pen work. I'm using a micron pen in the size 01, the nib size. Micron pens are a permanent pen once they're dry, so it makes a great pen to do this pen and ink work with for watercolor. Now when I started out, I didn't know how much black I was going to be adding to this painting, but you know, as I went along, I really love the look of having the black and the white background. I kept it plain. I didn't do any painting in my background, and I really like that look. I'm still doing my loose style of where I like that hand sketch look, so I'm just more sketching with my pen and not trying to be perfect. I have uneven lines. I'm going past some of the petals and the elements, and I'm creating more of a hand-drawn look using my micron pen.
At this stage of doing the line work, of adding the black, this is where I kind of decided, I really do like the look of this line work and that contrast of having that white background and then those strong qualities of the pen. I decided I was going to be adding more. And I really do like the way it looks in the final result of what the pen work looks like on top of the white paper and the watercolor. Now to add a little bit more bright white, I'm going to switch and use my Uniball pen. This Uniball pen was just about dried out, but I could get a little bit of white line on it and it worked perfect. I did add some little bit of scribbly bits using my Uniball pen. I chose one side of those little circles to add a little bright highlight there and just did it here and there, but I also popped in a highlight in the dark area of my little bird's eye. Every living thing has a catch light, so if you can put just the tiniest bit of white inside of those black eyes, it really does bring them to life. Now I'm going to switch and I'm going to be using some color pencil. The Canson watercolor paper is slightly smoother than some other papers and it works perfect to add color pencil on top. And I just love adding the scribble bits. It's just one of my favorite steps. I like using the watercolor as my base and it looked pretty with just the watercolor. But what makes my heart sing and very happy is adding all these little scribble layers and seeing how I can add texture to these watercolor paintings. But that's how I like to create. If that's not how you like to create, you can skip that step and just do the watercolor. Whatever makes you happy, and it's your art break. You do what's relaxing to you and create something pretty. This is where I switched to my Kimberly 9XXB pencil. It's a very soft graphite pencil, almost like a charcoal quality line. And I love like twisting and pulling and having different pressures when I use this pencil. It creates a very nice dark line. It's something different than the Uniball pen. It's not a pen ink. It's more of a charcoal hand drawing feeling. And I added a little bit to it. And this is what it looks like. Take a look at all those fun textures. Well, let's see what it looks like inside of my studio. The studio is blooming with so many different pretty paintings that we've created so far on my channel this spring. If you like doing whimsical style art or crafts, come on over and see what I'm doing. I'd love to have more creative friends join me. If you're not a subscriber yet, consider it. Hit that subscribe button, give me a like, leave me a comment. It really does help YouTube push my videos out there. Well, thanks for joining me today, and hopefully you'll come back and join me again. And perhaps next time you'll paint right along with me.